If you're a leader or founder in the life sciences, you already know that having a great product just simply isn't enough to be successful. You could have the most innovative technology in your space, but if you can't consistently get in front of the right prospects and close deals, your growth is going to hit a ceiling. Over the last 2 years, we've partnered with over 90 different life science teams to help them build a consistent pipeline, close more deals, and ultimately just scale their commercial operations. And so this video, I'm going to break down exactly how we work with life science companies to help you increase revenue, so you can see if partnering with Succession might be right for you. All right, let's dive in. All right, before we talk about exactly what we do, I first want to start by framing the problems that we can actually help solve for people. You kind of highlight the fact that the life science industry, specifically life science sales, is fundamentally different from many other industries that exist out there. I think the core thing is that you're going to be selling to scientists who are skeptical by nature, and they're trained to poke holes in everything, right? The traditional sales tactics that you might learn from a big brand sales training, don't always translate directly into the life sciences when you're selling into biotech and pharma. But the problem that really exists is that most sales training and most lead generation agencies out there, they really have no idea how to actually navigate the life sciences. They might be great at going and selling to enterprise software companies, but they just don't have the niche understanding that's required to sell into the life sciences. And so because of this, a lot of companies face the similar sort of problems. Founders have great tech, but they have no idea how to get it in front of the right decision makers. Sales teams are typically made up of scientists who never had formal sales training, or if they did have formal sales training, it was probably from more of a generalist sales trainer. And then they had to figure out, how do I now apply this to the life sciences when I'm selling into scientists? You might have messaging that sounds great internally, but you haven't actually validated that with external buyers. And then typically what we see, probably the biggest problem, is just unpredictable pipeline. You just simply don't have enough top of funnel opportunities. There's not enough conversations happening on a regular basis. And so then what ends up happening is you have this sort of sine wave of orders and sine wave of prospecting that occurs, where it's like, hey, we don't have any opportunities, we're going to prospect. Now we have too many opportunities, and so we're going to work on prospecting falls off. And then now all of a sudden you have no pipeline, so you have to start prospecting again. And so you don't have this consistent effort that's driving top of the funnel. Because of these problems, people tend to look for, like, what are some alternative solutions that I can look for, right? You might look for sales training, you might look for lead generation agency or a marketing agency who could really help keep that momentum going. But the problem with using industry agnostic providers is that they just simply, again, don't have the life science expertise in order to either write scientifically credible messaging, to understand, the difference between a MD, a PhD, the difference between a principal scientist and a scientist, between downstream processing and upstream processing. Like, these are just fundamental things that are incredibly difficult for you to have to train a generalist sales trainer or a generalist lead gen agency on. And so you really need somebody who can be a partner with you and be an extension of your team, who knows the industry and knows what good looks like in this particular industry. And that's exactly where we come in as Succession, right? So our whole background is in the life sciences. My co-founder Nick was in the lab for 17 years at pharma and biotech before moving over into the commercial world. So he's got a wealth of experience there. And then I spent 6 years before starting Succession working at a biotech called Synthego, where we helped grow the company basically from just a handful of reps to 50, 60 plus reps at one point, many multi-millions in revenue, kind of growing that all the way from the inside sales team up to leading revenue operations, even customer support. We have a lot of background in this space of just specifically in the life sciences. And then just in the last 2.5 years, we've worked with over 90 different companies in the life sciences. So we have a lot of niche experience in services, in CROs, working with expensive instruments, low-cost instruments, reagents, software, right? You name it, we pretty much have worked with every other type of company that you could imagine within this space. And so we know what works, we've seen what works, we've seen what doesn't work, and we know how to iterate on these things as we go. And then when that translates also into sales training, and we're talking about training around account management, prospecting, etc., this comes from our boots on the ground doing this stuff right now. And so the training that we provide is like, this is what's happening now. It's not from a book that was written 25 years ago. This is like actual data-driven training on what is actually working right now in the life sciences. And again, it's not some outdated, high-level theoretical concepts. So we really try and figure out, how can we make our training as very specific as possible so that your team can drive results quickly. So I'm going to break kind of our core offerings down into a couple of different buckets. On the lead generation front, the main things that we do there is our goal is to drive as many meetings for you as humanly possible and put those meetings directly on your calendar so that you and your team can go and spend time closing deals and not have to worry about prospecting, right? We're really that extension of your team. You don't have to go and hire an SDR, train them up, teach them how to work in a work environment. You don't have to go and pay for all the tools and technology that you're going to give them. Like, we basically come fully loaded, ready to go, run as many campaigns as you need, target as many people as you want. We've got all the databases that you could imagine. We take that data, we further enrich it, and we can pull all sorts of unique data points out of these different systems in order to have messaging that is actually different from other people. If you write funding messages to everybody and everybody's going off the same funding messaging information, that is like not going to stand out from everybody else. So the idea is, how can you find and create and identify unique, interesting data points that you can leverage in your outreach in order to help stand out? And the way we kind of do that is through that enrichment process, but also being able to hyper specifically tailor the messaging to the audience. We have all of the different databases that you could imagine out there. We even have our own like internal databases that we use. What we'll end up doing is creating these hyper specific targeted lists of prospects to go after, and then aligning the super relevant, scientifically accurate messaging to that audience. And so that's going to give us the best chance of success. If you've ever done any of these types of campaigns in the past, the typical process is, here's a list, here's a message, send message to list. But typically, like, that list is generated and it's just so broad, right? It's a list of titles that you pulled from a random list of companies, and there's no additional validation to understand, like, are these even the right people? Are these even the right companies? And so what we'll do is we'll drip these messages out over a series of emails, LinkedIn messages, paid ads, content, webinars, and we work with you kind of across that whole spectrum based on the objectives that you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to launch a new product, you may want to start with a webinar and run paid ads and cold outreach to drive people to that webinar, and then have a follow-up process where you're creating, say, LinkedIn content, which are clips from the webinar. You might create a blog post from that webinar as well, and then constantly have the feed of content going out as well, in addition to the outreach that's happening. So you kind of create this ecosystem of everything working together to drive as many possible meetings for you and your team. No one channel is going to be the thing that's going to break through and be constantly driving pipeline for you. You really have to be leveraging all of these different channels simultaneously in order to have the biggest chance of success. So the other kind of core offering that we have is around sales training. And so the main way that we do sales training with companies is we actually will come in, we'll learn about what are the biggest challenges or objectives that you have for the year, and then figure out what are the individual skills that are the gaps on the team that are going to prevent you from actually then achieving those objectives. So it could be account prioritization. It's the beginning of the year. You all have a territory now, new numbers. You have to figure out how I'm going to prioritize these particular sets of accounts to go after. It could be, we have low pipeline. We don't have enough opportunities in the funnel. So we actually need to figure out, how can we prospect better? So how can we get better at list building? How can we get better at messaging? It could be that we actually have enough opportunities, but those opportunities aren't converting. And so it might be looking at discovery. How can you go deeper at understanding discovery in order to make sure that you're aligning your solution to your high value, high priority initiatives that the company that you're selling to is focused on? Like, if you might have a great product, if it's not a priority for them at this time, that opportunity is just going to keep getting pushed and pushed quarter after quarter, and they're never going to take action on it. And so it's important that your team does the right qualifying, the right discovery in order to understand timelines, budget, etc., to move a deal forward and actually drive it to close. It could be negotiation. Maybe you guys are just getting squeezed on pricing on every single opportunity, and the team needs help to figure out how they can negotiate better, save your team margin, so that way you can actually hit those numbers and continue with growth rather than having to discount in order to win deals. But point being, we'll understand the skill deficiency that may be across the team based off of like your current pipeline, based off of current results, and then we'll turn that into tailored training packages. So a combination of maybe virtual sessions, in-person workshops. So maybe fly out for a sales kickoff that you guys are doing, you're bringing the team together, come and do 1 or 2 days on focused topics. I have a follow-up with virtual sessions, if you will, to reinforce those topics to make sure they're actually being leveraged across the team. And then we also have on-demand content where the team can go and access as well. The idea is, how can we up-level our team systematically all the way across every stage of the sales process? So everything from like, how do you prepare and how do you plan your territory, all the way through to how do you close deals, how do you drive deals to close, working with procurement, or even how do you handle your really challenging customers. So even post-sales sales, right? So how do you handle really challenging customers and having to work internally with the tech or the operations team in order to drive the best results? All right, now the other kind of core offering that we'll do with people as well is we'll actually work on building out different AI and automation workflows. And so this could be different AI agents that are trained around qualifying companies, qualifying people, doing account research, or it could even be we want to build a full automation process. So the second a lead comes to our website and fills out a form, we enrich all of the information about them. We do research, we understand what is the thing and why they reached out, and then we're able to craft a relevant follow-up message and send it directly out to that lead. And that way, lead response time drops to under 2 minutes, and then you're going to basically increase your chances of conversion by 21x. And this is a Harvard Business Review from actually many years ago, where they looked at the response times for leads. And if it took you more than 5 minutes to respond to a lead, your chance of that person being qualified to turn into an opportunity dropped by 21x. Not 21%, 21x. That's a core set of these types of processes when we work with clients, is we're trying to identify where are these gaps in the funnel, where are the things, and how AI and automation tools can be leveraged effectively to enhance your human salespeople. Really trying to take a deep dive into that with you, and then actually building out systematically what are all of those different workflows. So it could be things like signal-based outreach. So we want to ingest all of the news, we want to understand all of the hiring trends, everything that's going on around in the industry, and then be able to decipher that down to determine who are we going to reach out to when. Could be just simply around enriching the data in your database, inbound lead flow, account intelligence, so that way you can surface the right information at the right time for reps. All of this type of stuff is possible nowadays, and it's really possible to automate it to a point where it's probably better than what most reps would do. The best reps are still the best, and they're the best for a reason because they go above and beyond. But I'd say your majority of reps, a lot of this work, a lot of this sort of automated flows will create better sets of information, and it will be faster and more efficient than all of those reps. What you are trying to do with this is not replace them. What you're trying to do with this is you're trying to take away all of those administrative type of things, which is like research, lead follow-up, signals, enrichment, right? All of these things that are just like admin work. You want to be able to automate and use AI as much as you can in that process, so that way it enhances what it is those reps are actually doing. And then you work with those reps that maybe aren't the top reps, and then you're able to specifically work with them on the skills that matter, which are when they're face-to-face with customers, when they're on Zoom calls with potential prospects, and you're trying to drive deals to close. Those are the types of things where AI is not at all remotely ready to handle. And so that's where you need the humans. That's where you should be focusing on their efforts, their training, their development, and take the workhorse or the workload of all of these other sort of administrative tasks off of their plate. And so finally, why should you work with us? I've talked quite a little bit about kind of our uniqueness, I think, in this industry, where we're able to take a lot of the really modern outreach approaches and prospecting techniques and be able to apply it specifically to the life sciences, because this is literally all we do. All we do is work with life science companies. We don't work with any other types of brands or things of that nature. We really become an extension of your team. So we have regular catch-up strategy calls. We'll come with campaign ideas, all sorts of ways that we can help improve and drive results for your business. Because if you're happy, we're happy, right? It's like if we're able to make you happy and generate results for you, you're going to stay around a lot longer, and you're going to work with us for a lot longer period of time. And then I would say the last thing is, if you're thinking about really trying to drive top of funnel pipeline, and your objective is, I'm going to go hire some people, that's going to take a long time to ramp those people up. If you need pipeline fast, we can get spun up in a couple, 2 weeks flat, and be able to start launching campaigns and start driving actual results. The advantage there is that you don't have to bring in a new person, hire them, onboard them, give them the tools, give them the training, and then have them on board, learn everything about you, and then ultimately start driving results. Is because of our expertise around lead gen, because of our experience in the life sciences, already having access to all of these different tools and systems and processes, we're able to get started extremely quickly to start driving results for you and your team. So that's exactly how we help life science companies generate more pipelines, scale their commercial operations, ultimately close more deals. And so whether you're a founder, sales leader, marketing leader, whatever it is, you're trying to get your first customer, you're trying to scale your sales team, you're trying to enhance the commercial operations side of your business to make your team more effective, we pretty much have something that's going to be relevant for what it is that you need. And so if you want to book a strategy call with us, you can click the link below in the description. We'll get on a call, we'll talk through your specific situation, try and figure out what is the best opportunities for growth, ways that we might be able to help. And if we're not the right partner, we actually know a lot of other great agencies and partners out there that we can recommend you to as well. So you can book a strategy call in the link below, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.